Oh, man. Wow. Sorry about that, I just woke up. I had a really bad dream about watching a movie that pretended to be about action and have some important message, and then it turns out that it had already been done before in a far better manner. Before I hit the ground running, please, if you enjoy what you hear in this video, then like and subscribe to help build this kingdom. The Running Man 2025 stars Glenn Powell as Ben Richards in a much more faithful adaptation to the original novel. Set in a similar dystopian future, with Ben being a regular person who's just down on his luck instead of a police officer who refuses to shoot a bunch of civilians. Ben desperately needs money for his daughter so that he can get her some medicine. With no other options available and failing to get any other jobs, he decides to risk it for the biscuit and applies for the tryouts for the Running Man. Passing the trials with flying colors, Ben and two other individuals who he helped throughout the trials are allowed to become the next running men for the newest season. One by one, each of the contestants are brought in to talk to Dan Killian, the man behind the Running Man show who works at The Network. The other two contestants, who I will accurately describe and name as Dim and Dyke from now on, take their deal behind closed doors and fuck off. Ben, however, is smarter than the average extra, so he refuses the deal and gets ready to go on the run. Now, unlike the original movie, everybody has a few set rules that they have to abide by. First off, every one of them has a bracelet that's totally not a tracker, wink. Each of them has to be recorded by at least 7 minutes of footage before they send it into the network. They can run for their life just about in any way, shape, or form they can, so long as they survive the full 30 days. And so long as they manage to avoid any of the hunters that go after them, any of the citizens are also a threat, because any of them can turn on the running men as if they were Ahmed Aubrey. Later that evening, after some prep time and probably every prayer they could make to God, they get ready to do their run. One by one, the contestants are brought out, and each one of them is lied to as the movie tips its hand with how often they can use deepfakes and other such special effects to lie about these individuals. These falsehoods pretty much make Ben crash out, understandably so, and then they are given a 12-hour head start to run for their lives and hide away. No one really knows where the other two went because, frankly, they're not very important. However, Ben meets up with William H. Macy, who happens to be a member of the Resistance. Yeah, it's not really explained where the Resistance comes from, it just exists. So he stocks up on a new disguise, a couple pieces of gear here and there, and then he leaves. Staying in a motel for the first few days, he doesn't feel too bad. Meanwhile, it turns out William H. Macy's character has already been found and is tortured for information, to which he gives up Ben's identity. It's at about this time that the first of the other two contestants dies, so Ben gets the idea that he should probably move from the hotel he's currently staying at to another one. So, in the shady hotel from the trailer, we are an hour into this movie, and we finally get our first action scene. Yep, the first 3 minutes of my video saves you an hour of watch time. Anyway, Ben is chased throughout the hotel before he ends up in the basement, where a bunch of the gunfire cracks open a few of the gas lines, which don't conveniently blow up even though there's sparks from all the gunfire. After escaping down into the sewer and recording himself to still be alive, the explosion that took out nearly the entire bottom half of this motel is blamed on Ben. Then, after conveniently being picked up by a couple of brothers who are also a part of the Resistance, he's brought into their home to be taken care of. Hiding out in the house for a little bit, he's shown to be helpful around the home before the older brother shows him a YouTube video that he created. I wish I was lying, but this is the first of the exposition scenes. The older brother's video goes on to explain that the Running Man show is all lies. None of the people have ever actually survived, everything is rigged, yada yada yada. And it's at this point that Ben decides to step outside into the public view, I don't know why, and record himself making a video talking about how the little man needs to stand up against the network. Sending the video in, he totally forgot that they have the ability to, AI and deepfake everything because he has the mental capacity of a goldfish. Ben's video is tampered with to make it seem as though he was happy about the explosion and wanted to see people killed. The very obviously fake video is enough to get the mother of this household to want Ben out of the house. Put a pin in that because there's a lot wrong with this film. Anyway, the brothers go to sneak him out of town and tell him they have a contact outside of the city who can help him to survive the rest of the season. One boring car chase later, where people can't shoot straight to save their lives later, it turns out the connection is Michael Cera way out on the fringe of the city's limits. Sarah welcomes Ben into the house. He's got a deaf mother who doesn't know that Ben is there, even though she absolutely hates Ben, but don't worry, that won't come up again. Wink. And down in the basement, we get our second exposition scene, this time for the backstory of Sarah and his father. It turns out his dad was actually a police officer, and he chose not to be a corrupt piece of crap. So they killed him for it after he opened a hot dog stand. I'm not kidding, he got caught in like a riot or something, and so they killed his dad. I'm sorry, who the fuck wrote this? Hold on. Oh no. Edgar Wright. Now he's Edgar Wrong. I'm getting ahead of myself, don't worry, I'll save this all for later. Anyway, the next morning, the mother, who is deaf and doesn't know that Ben Richards is in the house, magically knows that Ben Richards is in the house. Sarah tries desperately to stop her from pressing the oh shit button, which magically spawns the entire police force in every one of these homes for some reason, and after Ben tries to explain to her that he's a good guy and pressing this would get everyone here killed, Michael Cera presses the fucking button. Why? Yeah, the reason he pulls out of his ass is that he wants to basically fight the police on his way out, thinking that they'll have enough time to escape into the tunnels underneath the building. Hand to God, I swear this is their arguments. I don't understand what is happening, and I cannot believe Edgar Wright wrote this. Anyway, the entire police force fast travels to the house, and we have this Home Alone-style fight where Ben is basically pulled to the side so that Michael Cera can pretend to be Kevin McAllister. It's pretty boring, and everything you saw in the trailer is exactly what happens in the movie. So one spoiled scene later, they end up in the tunnels where they're caught by another hunter who wounds Cera to the gut. Then a drone flies down and Dan Killian tries to make another deal with Ben, who refuses and they go out on the run. Bugging out in a dune buggy in the back roads, Scott Pilgrim explains that there's this safe magical zone that he can reach as long as he follows his dad's directions. Toronto. And then Scott Pilgrim is shot in the head because there's nothing fun to do in Toronto. So Ben manages to escape this situation because the one that shot Scott Pilgrim is in a helicopter and the other that he spared in the tunnel is now driving a truck. Ben escapes the situation by blowing up the dune buggy with Scott Pilgrim in it into the truck and leaping off the bridge. Sometime later, he finds himself in a construction site and passes out, and then he records a video of himself saying what he intends to do to both Dan Killian and the network, and then makes his way to a freeway. On the freeway, all of the light posts have these fart smellers, and that activates to let everyone know where Ben is. This is where Amelia is finally introduced to the story almost an hour and a half into it. They are nearly crushed in their escape, but Amelia gets the gun, and they are both pulled over by some civilians. After turning these two into Swiss cheese, Ben turns on the TV in the car, which then shows some fake footage of Amelia being a hostage. Amelia is dumbfounded by this, but eventually Ben convinces her to help him, and they both drive up towards the Canadian border. They reach a blockade right before the airport, and at this point, Ben has the idea to try and bluff them out with what is called Black Irish in this movie. Apparently, it's basically C4 on crack. Also, he's completely surrounded by a ton of civilians who are on Ben's side for some reason. Don't worry, I'll get to it. And instead of calling their bluff, Dan Killian calls the hunter and says let them pass, and he even gives in to Ben's demands, which is a specific type of plane that Ben knows about. Put a pin in that too. And after they take off, Dan Skypes with Ben about how he actually knows there's no real bomb, but he still offers him another deal. And Killian knows this because the plane has a bunch of built-in sensors to be able to detect whether or not a bomb is on board. And this is contradictory to what Ben had to say because he chose this plane specifically because he knows the planes that he worked on. And this is further proven by the fact that when he asks the people in the cockpit how many bathrooms there are on board, he corrects them from 4 to 6. So the deal is, become one of the hunters of the series, or the family dies. Now I should specify that the deal is in private, it's only between these two, the other hunters have been separated from the room, and even Amelia cannot hear this. Ben, of course, refuses, and is shown a bunch of footage of his family being murdered, which, again, he should know is false. But he doesn't, which is enough to trick him into going on a blood rage, so he ends up fighting and killing all of the hunters on the plane. And after ejecting Amelia from the plane, Ben is left with only one other option. Make a deal with Dan in order to survive, or crash the plane into the network, because apparently he was initially flowing to Canada, but realized, fuck Toronto, so he made a U-turn. After, again, making another plea to the people, which is never actually shown to them because he's a fucking idiot, he decides to one-up Osama and crash into the network. So these are Ben's final moments. He's about to crash into the network and kill Killian along with him, shutting down the Running Man once and for all, and while he'll never get to see his baby girl again, He will die with dignity, knowing that he tried to do something to set the world free from TV effectively in this dystopian universe. And then we hard cut to another one of the stupid fucking brothers' videos in the middle of this experience where they go on to explain how he managed to survive because the capsule of the plane ejected and Ben crashed into the river and his body was never recovered. Yeah, imagine if in the middle of the Incredibles scene where Elastigirl saves her children, they just start playing a fucking YouTube ad. Now I've been cucked without my consent and my temper is through the fucking roof. The video goes to explain that Ben has now spontaneously become a hero to the people, and he goes on to survive, even buying his kids some socks and meeting with his wife in secret. Which is not actually so secret when he's in public. And then we hard cut to the fucking studio audience because Dan Killian now has to run the show after Bobby T leaves. Don't worry, Bobby's not important. And they end up throwing Molotov cocktails and start rioting inside the studio because no one has any fucking idea how they managed to fit these things up their own asses. 2 crowds, 1 riot, I guess. And in the midst of all of this, Ben Richards walks up to Killian backstage and blows his brains out off screen. There you go, 10 minutes of summary to save you 2 hours of wasted time. First things first, I'll start with the pacing because it is slow as balls. It picks up during the action, of course, but the first time we get any of that is when he's hiding out at the hotel, which is an hour into the movie. And even that first hour of the film could have been cut down to 15, 20, hell, 30 minutes at the absolute most, but they didn't do it. In fact, because of how inconsistent the action is, not that the action needs to be the main focus, but it just sounds like a car chugging along because every time it jerks forward, you step on the gas, and when it pulls forward and you go back, you let off the gas, so you just end up rocking back and forth. And much of this is because the tone is so inconsistent. And because it's a remake, you get to fairly compare it to the original, which was very cartoony. The original was sarcastic and kind of colorful with its unique characters and art design and a couple other things here and there. But the new one is meant to be vile and kind of dry and dull. Even the color is really unimpressive. And this contrast is best examined between the killers, because the original, they were fun and wacky and memorable. Fireball, Sub-Zero, and I don't remember his name, but I'll call him Operatic Raiden. But here, they're just guys with guns. And only one of them is kind of recognizable because he has a mask, ironically not showing his face. And it's not as though the action is particularly remarkable either. Almost everyone gets blown up or shot, with the exception of the dyke who gets purged of her STDs. The unique challenge and way to defeat each of the hunters in the original film is gone. And let me be clear, I'm not defending the original Running Man as some masterclass of anything. It's not a good movie, but holy shit, it's at least better than this one. The new one will put you to sleep faster than an entire bottle of NyQuil. Do you want bad guys who would miss the broadside of Alderaan? Check. Car chases with unnecessary drifting? Check. Stuntmen taking all the time in the world to reload instead of just killing their target? Check. Nah, I'd rather see Arnold Schwarzenegger in a onesie try to fight a dude with a chainsaw who ends up getting cut in half with it. And boy, is there a ton of convenience here. The way the hunters track down all of the running men is never explicitly stated, but it's not hard to accept that that's probably got a tracker in their bracelets. However, the method by which they track everyone down is inconsistent. Like, sure, William H. Macy's character gives up Ben's identity, but why go to Macy's character in the first place? Hell, if we assume that they can track everybody down through the bracelets, why wasn't Ben tracked down to the family's house? Like, this is proven because the hunters tracked down Ben's video all the way at the construction site where he has zero contact with anyone. For that matter, how does literally anyone know where Ben is? Some citizens spontaneously find the brothers on their way out of the city with Ben in the trunk and start attacking it. How did the blonde hunter know that there were underground tunnels beneath Sarah's house? And there's more conveniences, like why is it that everybody spontaneously decides that, hey, we're gonna be on Ben's side? Ben was never shown in any positive light from the start of The Running Man all the way up to that point. Or again, the audience at the end of the movie, how they just have Molotov cocktails and guns and everything else in the network's building, but no one at the security decided to check anyone for these things? The original was better about this as well. The audience were all higher class individuals versus this one where everyone is either poor or middle at best. And all of this is because of the writing, of course, and my goodness, wow, Edgar Wright wrote this. I almost refuse to believe it. and any sort of denial from this point on would just be pure cope. The dialogue is straightforward, simple, and flat. It has no flair whatsoever. First off, there are almost no comebacks or retorts from any of the characters. I know no one can ever truly compare to Arnold and his terrible one-liners, but my goodness, when they are gone, it is apparent. Just take the comparison between when Arnold grabs the camera and smashes it versus when Glenn does.
You cold-blooded bastard. I'll tell you what I think of it. I live to see you eat that contract. But I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine! Ah! Stop filming me!
I get he's just angry in the moment, but it sounds so whiny. I almost need to watch the original again just to get this movie's taste out of my mouth, because man, I missed the Sub-Zero, now Plane Zero line. Nothing like that exists. It's a damn shame, because the movie really just comes down to a whole lot of nothing. And that's because so much of the time and dialogue is either wasted or confused. We get 3 exposition scenes in this movie. 3! You could have condensed and altered the first one to happen during some sort of action scene and removed the other 2 entirely, and it would have significantly improved the pace of this movie. And I know that Edgar Wright didn't write the entire movie, he did co-write it, but it's still Edgar Wright. But you cannot defend this. At one point before he escapes from the city, Ben is disguised as a priest, and there's a conversation that goes something along the lines of, "Have you seen this Ben guy, priest?" And then one of the other dudes asks him, "What's wrong with him?" as Ben walks out of the room. And then the guy follows up with, "He's blind, you idiot." Then why'd you fucking ask him? Edgar, please, show me on this doll where Hollywood touched you. And it's not the only stupid choice. Throughout the movie, Ben checks his band in public on the train, and he gets caught immediately by a kid, but he threatens the kid and then offers him some fucking food, and he shuts up. Dim decides to hide out in public, hits on a waitress, and gets killed for it. The Dyke decides to go out in a blaze of glory, and she gets caught by a bunch of civilians, and I mean kids, who then torch her with flamethrowers. And no, before some fucking retard with media literacy tries to argue otherwise, oh, but it was actually explained in the movie because that's just their character types. Fuck off. You're probably the same kind of moron who thinks that Daenerys' burning of King's Landing was justified because she heard the bells. I'm so sick and tired of overtly stupid characters in a story. That Dim didn't even make any fucking sense. He walked into the Running Man thinking that the show wasn't real in the first place. Hell, their stupidity isn't even limited to them. Ben constantly forgets that Killian can just keep faking everything with AI and special effects. And that brings up another big issue of the world building, because deepfakes and AI like this are so overpowered. In the original, it was reserved for special moments because Ben kept killing their hunters. It felt like the reveal of a trump card, like, wow, we finally get to see how they've been able to falsify all of these victors for the Running Man. But here, it's just totally blatant. Nobody questions anything, everyone just goes with it. It's not special anymore because there's no big reveal. It's flaunted from the beginning until the end. And the fact that it repeatedly tricks Ben only makes him look dumber in the end. Also, and this is just one offline that they never really followed up with, but I wanted to bring up anyway, TVs can apparently watch you back. Yeah, there's a small exchange between Ben and I think it was the older brother, if not it was Macy's character, either which way. Apparently analog TVs are in a high demand because they cannot record you in the first place. It's just something to bring up because I was like, okay, well, if that be the case, then everybody should know where anybody is at almost any time. Anyway, it's a real shame, too, because I really like Glenn Powell. I think he could absolutely be a leading man, but asking him to just scowl the entire time doesn't help. He's got the chops and the build to be a good leading man in an action movie, and he's really only allowed to cut loose in one scene, and it's not very well edited. He's wasted here. It's a shame. And then you have Dan Killian and Bobby T. Part of the reason why Killian worked in the original movie is because you had one character who ran the show and was the host. It's another example of how to properly condense something in an efficient manner. Separating the two characters just adds more time, more dialogue, and wastes more money because of the budget. Brolin has almost nothing going for him because he's just a straight-to-the-throat kind of businessman. On the opposite side, you got Coleman Domingo, who is the exact opposite because he's got enough charisma to bet a dragon as a bard in D&D. Again, it doesn't matter if these two characters are played so contrastly. It was better to have them as one character in the original because it saved on time and budget. Although, if I'm being fair, he absolutely steals the show as Bobby T. But why is Michael Cera here? I don't care if he was Scott Pilgrim. There is no reason for this character. You could cut him entirely from the movie and it would only improve it. It's 10 or 15 minutes. That's a long time in a movie. And David Zayas, why? This remake proves that just because you're trying to be more accurate to the source material, that doesn't mean that it's going to equate better quality. It's the same thing with Jaws. The original movie is actually better than the book. It's an odd cocktail of baffling decisions that all led to one problem after the other, of stupid characters, bad world building, boring action, and just a pace that feels like you're on a sleigh ride pulled by tortoises. I would say don't bother with it, just watch the original, because shockingly, despite nearly 40 years of difference, the Arnold Schwarzenegger film with hilarious but terrible one-liners is more efficient, better paced, and smarter than the Edgar Wright remake. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, then please like, share, comment, and subscribe to help build this kingdom. Head to my secondary channel, Balmorian Herald, for news and political commentary. Head to my tertiary channel, Balmorian Galaxy, for Battletech and MechWarrior. And if you feel so inclined, then please donate to me on Subscribestar so I can continue to produce more content for all of you. I thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.